Welcome to the Hunger Action Heroes podcast. Hunger Action Heroes is a production of the Food Bank of the Golden Crescent. The Food Bank of the Golden Crescent was established in 1986 as the Community Food Bank in Victoria, Texas. Our mission is helping heal the hurt of hunger in our 11-county service area: Calhoun, Colorado, DeWitt, Goliad, Gonzales, Jackson, Lavaca, Matagorda, Refugio, Victoria, and Wharton. We passionately advocate for a hunger-free Texas. Your host, Chris Doelle, will bring you a message from our sponsor and get right into the episode. Stick around.
The Hunger Action Heroes podcast by the Food Bank of the Golden Crescent is made possible by the generous support of the HEB Hunger Relief Program. HEB Hunger Relief works year-round to fight hunger in Texas and Mexico. Hunger relief has been a key focus for HEB since the first store opened back in 1905. For more than a century now, HEB's commitment and involvement in the communities it serves has been an important part of the way the company does business. Since the inception of the Hunger Relief Program, HEB has donated over 1 billion pounds of food to help nourish neighbors in communities throughout Texas and Mexico. Thank you to the HEB Hunger Relief Program.
All right, everybody, join me in welcoming Kim Pickens. You are a homeless advocate. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I guess let's back up. Where did you grow up?
Well, I was born and raised here in Victoria, Texas, but I spent the majority of my formative 20s and 30s in growing up in Houston.
Nice. And when did you first become aware of homelessness and decide, hey, I want to do this for a living and try to help?
Well, I guess the thing is, I would never have imagined that I would be doing this work. It was really something that happened just outside of what my comfort zone was. I've never worked in I'd never worked in human services like that before. I've always usually had admin, different jobs. I'd worked at the University of Houston, but when you live in a place like Houston, you see a lot of people every day, standing on the corners and things like that. And so I was aware of homelessness, but never had gotten involved until my family and I actually became homeless. And it was something that, honest to goodness, happened within an hour out of our life. We had tried to move into a house that we were supposed to be buying, and the people never left before. And so basically they were not leaving, and we had nowhere to go. So for the next 6 months, we couch surfed at a relative's house until we could actually kind of get our feet back underneath us and find another place. But it happened just that quick, and it wasn't because of addiction or bad choices. It was really just something we had no control over. And so, it really opened my eyes to how fast things can happen to you, especially as a family. And my husband and I had small children, so it was a very eye-opening experience.
Nice. And then, how did you then move into being an advocate and actually taking some action?
Well, when I, after that experience, we would, as a family, we would go. There's a organization in Houston called Food Not Bombs that feeds people who are hungry, and by virtue, some of them are homeless. And we did that for a year. And then when we moved back to Victoria, growing up in a place, a smaller city, you don't think about homelessness affecting where you're from. You have these idyllic memories of things. And so I see people standing on the corner with signs, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? And so I sought out the Homeless Coalition and was just very interested in how to help. And so from that experience of finding people who were already doing this work it led me to doing research and to actually talking to people who were homeless and finding out what they needed, and that brought me to the advocacy piece of being able to talk to providers, talk to city council people, talk to anybody who would listen about, like, how can we do something about this?
Wow. And for a lot of people, we may drive past a homeless person and not even see them. Talk about the situation in the Victoria area as it relates to homelessness.
Well, and in Victoria, homelessness, and it looks different depending on what your situation is, because the people that you see standing with a sign saying, anything helps or God bless you or whatever, are a very small part of the population of people who are actually homeless in Victoria. The majority of the people you'll never see, because they are those people that are doubled up with family or sleeping in cars or living in hotels. So it looks a lot different depending on what the situation is. But, the thing is, those folks that are out there holding signs are usually the ones that have the least amount of potential resources to help themselves get out of homelessness. Like, they may not have IDs, birth certificates, things that they actually need, and they definitely don't have an address or to write down on an application of where they live. So, like, all those things kind of add up to different types of homelessness, but the ones that we see are the ones that are in the worst position.
Yeah, definitely. And talk about the organization, the Homeless Coalition of the Golden Crescent.
Homeless Coalition of the Golden Crescent is a collection of nonprofit organizations that have that directly affect those that are homeless, or who have kind of a peripheral dealings with folks that are homeless. But it's also made up of churches and also made up of businesses. It's also the city, so there's a governmental piece to that, and of individuals who just really want to see or help to affect change. And we meet where we usually we meet every month, but during the summer, usually, there's a lot of vacation stuff going on. So we take take May and June off. And so basically we meet for at least an hour where we talk about the different things that are going on in our community. Because we cover a 7 to 10 county area around us, because Victoria is a hub, and Victoria is considered urban, but as soon as you step outside the city limits, everything around us is all rural, and rural homelessness looks different than quote unquote urban homelessness as well. And so we try to include people who are in those different counties to try to equip them with tools and resources and anything that we can do to help in each other's communities to try to lift people out of homelessness.
Yeah, and if you could educate us, how does rural homelessness look different?
Well, I'll tell you, I met a young man last week who was from Goliad, and he's staying in a tent out on a piece of property. And, the thing is, he has no shower access, no way to cook food. I mean, when you're in rural homelessness, a lot of times what we see are maybe people living in those, kind of very cheap motels when they can afford to be there. They're probably doing odd jobs and things like that. But the resource, like, you don't have access to, showers and food pantries, or food, you don't have access to a Christ kitchen to go and eat at. You might have a food pantry at a church, but, it's very limited as to what you can even take. Obviously, you can't take things that are perishable unless you're eating them right away. So it just, rural homelessness is really hard. I mean, if we think, regular, quote unquote, regular homelessness is hard, rural homelessness is so much worse than that. You don't have transportation that's available to you, and it just like you are resource poor, like very, very desperate potential. Trying to get even to where you can get some help.
Yeah, even to get to a food pantry is a major task. It's probably 20, 30 miles away.
It could be. And the thing is, like I said, you're on foot. And in a heat like this, we're seeing lots of people that are seeking medical treatment because of heat exhaustion, heat stroke. So like I said, just, all these things, because this summer has been brutal already, and we're only, still in June.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we mentioned the food pantries. Food as a whole is a huge need for the homelessness, and talk about how what you do ties in with organizations like the Food Bank of the Golden Crescent.
Well, one of the things that we know is, if you can't eat, you don't survive. And so like having access to a place like the Food Bank, the Golden Crescent, that actually not only services all the food pantries in our area that the Homeless Coalition services, it's also, supplying food to places like Christ Kitchen that actually serve food. And then you have places like a VCAM that will give daily bags to folks that show up that are homeless, so that way they have, even if it's not a lot of food, it's something every day that they can actually eat. So we know that, and those food distributions that get done, out in the outer counties, that helps to give folks in those rural areas access to food. So all those things are critical to, it's the hierarchy of needs, food, clothing, and shelter. Mm-hmm. You have to have food to survive.
Definitely. And how, for people who want to make themselves more aware of the situation and ways they can help, how do you recommend they proceed?
I always recommend that people join us at Homeless Coalition meetings, whether we always allow people to join online too, whether it's online or in person, to also go and actually volunteer at places like Christ Kitchen and VCAM, or if you're out in the outer counties outside of Victoria, there are places in Gonzales and DeWitt County, Goliad County that do food pantries, and you will meet people that even if they're not what you would consider to be homeless, once you start to talk to them, you might find that they are, and they just don't want to admit it, because it is There's a lot of shame that goes on with that. But I always recommend that people come and actually sit and talk to people either doing the work or that are actually in those situations.
Definitely. And if somebody doesn't have time to do that and they just want to maybe donate, how can they reach out to you?
Basically, anytime that somebody wants to donate, I always suggest they donate to maybe Midcoast Family Services, to the Humility Project, any of those places that serve our homeless population. Those are people I would definitely say they need to reach out to.
Excellent. Well, Kim Pickens, I want to thank you so much for not only all the amazing work you do, but for taking the time to be with me here and share some of that story.
Certainly, I appreciate it.